Hi, and welcome to the board, connecting you to the world of Agile. I'm Kirsten, and this is Nathan.
Hi everyone, I'm an Agile coach at Boost New Media.
And I'm also an Agile coach at Boost New Media. So today we're going to be talking about a number of topics, but what I'd like to start with is what makes a good Scrum Master. I've been looking at some things on the net in a couple of groups this week about Agile, talking about what kind of person makes a good Scrum Master, what kind of background, whether a person with a technical background or a non-technical person.
And this is kind of a controversial thing sometimes, isn't it?
It can be, yeah. There's differing opinions.
Definitely, and Mike's given us a bit of a question that fits quite well with this as well, which is stepping over the line, stopping the slide from the master of Scrum to the master of the team. So that's definitely something we'll talk about as well. So thanks for that, Mike. I was in a course with Gavin not so long ago, a Scrum Master course, and the person who was leading that course suggested that an improvisational comedian was really the best person to be a Scrum Master. What do you think of that?
Well, I don't know if I personally have enough of a sort of comedic flair. Certainly my background's as a traditional project manager, which does bring us to Mike's question about stopping the slide from becoming a controlling of the team. And I think it is hard sometimes for traditional project managers to go from that place where they have to know everything about the project and make decisions and be very directional to becoming that servant leader, Scrum Master. Quite often I have to remind myself to hold back and allow the team to take the lead.
Yeah, I find myself reminding you of that quite often as well. Just kidding, everybody. So it's interesting, we started talking about whether it was a technical person who should be leading the team or who should be the Scrum Master leading the process or someone else. And I think it's a wee bit of a red herring to go down that road of thinking about technical person or project management background or even indeed improvisational comedian. And it's somewhat more useful to think about what are the characteristics of a person that's useful, or what can they learn? And for me, Lisa Adkins' book, Coaching Agile Teams, really sets out a number of the behaviours that a good Scrum Master should have. And really it's about being able to be an intuitive people person, caring about people, caring about products. What else do you see?
Yeah, and I think it does take that degree of patience and, the willingness to, rather than leaping in with solutions, to stand back and ask questions to help the team come to their own solutions, rather than trying to tell them what to do. As I say, I think it's something you do have to get used to. If you're not used to that role, it's something that you build up as you get more experience. That Lisa Adkins book, I've been watching a series of videos by Lisa Adkins at the moment on this subject. I think that's really helping me.
That's the Coaching Agile Teams video series?
Yeah. And I think that's really helping. It has a few exercises you can do sort of where you get to examine your own behaviour and look at what you might improve on. And
some of those underlying assumptions that you have about the world, right? Some of the things that you look at with her.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really thought-provoking and it really helps. And I think last week when I was looking at it, there was a situation when I was then able to apply it when talking to a team member, and it really helped. So I'm really enjoying that.
That's good. So overall, I'd say when we're looking for someone to move into that sort of Agile leader, Agile coach, Scrum Master role, we're really wanting someone who can work with the team, who gets the value of seeing the team succeed, enjoys giving people the opportunity to grow individually and as a team, enjoys those sort of processes.
True. So something I want to talk about next that came up for me in the sprint I'm in at the moment is when should you resize a story? Say, for example, during the course of the sprint, you find out there's a whole lot more work for that story. Should you resize it when you're finished, when you've had an idea of exactly how much work is involved, or should you resize at another point? Should you resize at the end of the sprint? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's interesting. I think that it can be useful to resize at the end of the sprint, but really the key for me is that you want to resize it as soon as you know more about the story. So as soon as something changes, and it's an opportunity for a conversation with the product owner.
Right, because it's having an effect on their time and their budget. And
Yeah, that's right. And especially if we think about the priority of a story being a factor of its value and its cost. If the cost changes significantly, the priority may be affected. And so being able to have that conversation with the product owner is really useful. And also I think it's a good lever for talking about, is this the simplest way of achieving the value you were looking for? Or should we have a conversation to talk about how that might work?
so actually the resizing is helping you collaborate closely with the product owner on that story.
Exactly.
And during that sprint.
Exactly. So, I think we've seen in the past where a story seems to have grown considerably, and when we get together to talk about, yes, it's grown, let's have a look at it, we can come up with a simpler solution that satisfies all the product owner's needs, but is done in a different way.
Yeah, I think it's really important.
Back into the combination of value and cost.
Yeah, I think sometimes it can be hard when a developer is hard at work on a story to sort of put their head up and think, actually, do I need to now look at this? They get very involved, and I guess that's part of the role of the Scrum Master, to coach the team to look at these things and maybe just stop and have a wee think about it.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because that's one approach the Scrum Master could take. Another approach would be perhaps to let the team fail in a small way, to give them an opportunity for some reflection and learning later on, perhaps in a retrospective or some other setting.
Yeah.
So rather than saving the team from themselves, acknowledging that there's probably something there that needs to be worked on, and having a forum for doing that separately.
Yeah. So do you think that if you were having a retrospective, you might in some way craft that retrospective to bring the right or gather the right insights on that area? Can you focus a retrospective on a particular aspect?
Yeah, I mean, certainly you can focus retrospectives on particular aspects, and quite common areas are quality, teamwork. Okay. You might look at productivity, but I don't think. I think if the Scrum Master is running a good retrospective, these things will come up. Anyway, when you're working with a high-performance team, they are quite reflective once, as you say, their head's out of the weeds and out of the work, and they've got a chance to sit back and reflect.
Okay. That brings me on to something else I want to talk about this week, which is the value of metrics. In Scrum. There's a lot of talk about metrics. Sometimes, your product owner will want to know things like the velocity and looking at getting through the work. But what do you think is the real value of metrics to the team and to the overall project?
Yeah, I suppose it depends on what the metrics you're collecting and what you're trying to achieve. So I always try to think of metrics initially is how can we support the team to be a better team and more productive. Of course, organisations need to have a view into the wider metrics. So for instance, if you're doing release planning, it's very useful to know what the projected date is based on the current scope. Then you can decide, okay, do we need to de-scope this work to meet a certain date, or do we need to split this work across two teams, or whatever needs to be done. So metrics at an organisational level are useful, but what I always try to keep in mind is what metrics are going to be useful for the team to help them improve.
And actually, there was a really good blog post I was reading this week about this. It's called 5 Tips for Agile Measurement, and it's on Tech Republic. It's actually written by a guy who works at Rally. And his thoughts on this are that we should be avoiding a keeping score approach and using metrics as feedback as opposed to a lever for the team to help the team. So I recommend people take a look at that. We'll be posting up the URL after the show. And
Mike's just made a great comment. He sees metrics as early warning tools rather than performance measures. And that's exactly right. And I think to build on that, Mike, one of the things that we see is that looking at metrics in a point of time isn't nearly as useful as looking at trends. So, for instance, if we look at code coverage as a metric that a lot of teams use, often it'll be, okay, where are we at this point of time? We're at 80% coverage, we had decided to be at 90%. That doesn't take into account the nature of the work that's going on and a number of other things. So what's more useful is for the team to perhaps notice that the trend is decreasing. So over the last 6 weeks, we've gone from 80% coverage to 60% coverage. And that gives them a chance to explore, okay, why is that? Is that something we want to happen? Do we need to focus on that some more? So over time, it's definitely more useful than a point in time. So we've got another question from Sandy. Do you believe metrics will drive behaviour? If so, what do you think are the advantages and dangers?
Well, I think it can be a disadvantage in driving behaviour if you're focusing on metrics such as velocity. You may find the team sizing differently, for example, so that it seems like the velocity is going up, but then you're then looking at compromises and things like quality, perhaps. So it may not have the best effect.
I think it's really true. Whatever you measure is going to have an impact. So you have to be very careful that the measurements don't create behaviours in the team that you don't want to see or that aren't healthy for the team. So sort of toxic behaviours. And definitely, some of the metrics that have been more traditionally used in software project management, like lines of code, we really see those as being largely irrelevant. Simpler, cleaner code should be the objective, not masses of lines of code.
Sure. What kind of metrics do you think are useful for the team to act as feedback for inspecting, adapting and improvement, as opposed to some kind of push for productivity?
Well, one of the metrics that we're seeing teams use around the world at the moment that seems to be working well is looking at a metric of team happiness and individual happiness. And I'll post a link to this onto the blog, but the sort of questions in there are, would you recommend to other people to work on this team? Are you happy working on this team? So if we can maximise the happiness of the team, then we're going to maximise their productivity. I think also in Scrum teams it is helpful to look at velocity because that allows us to do some planning. But I don't think it should be taken as an absolutely a rule, the numbers as a rule. They're really an indication to help the team with their planning, to help the team know what they can commit to, and to help the organisation plan for releases and stuff like that.
Sure. Okay. Something else that came up this week was a question over what would you do during a sprint if the product owner is suddenly taken away at a crucial time, say when a lot of stories are being finished, on an unavoidable sort of situation, say a personal emergency or something like that. What do you do? Do you look for someone else within that organisation to be the proxy product owner, or do you stop the sprint?
Right, so this is sort of a Gavin's been on a week-long bender, has ended up in a foreign country, perhaps in jail.
Sure, that sounds
something
feasible,
that you can't, easily fix. I think the first thing to do is to talk to the team. Come back to the team and find out what they actually need.
Sure.
And then talk to the wider organisation. It may be that there's some work that can be done while we're waiting for the product owner to be released from jail that is useful and doesn't need immediate feedback. So maybe something that's already been planned and the team has a reasonable amount of insight into. Or perhaps you need to stop the sprint and reevaluate, appoint another product owner for the time being. Does anyone in the audience have any suggestions or questions, or have been in the situation themselves? We'd love to know.
That would be interesting, yeah.
I mean, have you seen this situation before, Kirsten?
I haven't actually, not in the year that I've been doing this. Our product owners tend to be around most of the time, but obviously sometimes these are unavoidable. But I've not had to deal with it.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it either. Usually we're working around planned sort of outages for product owners if a product owner can have an outage. But so a product owner might be away for a couple of days or even a week. And in that case, it's about organising the team around that and perhaps, Skype catch-ups or whatever's needed so that the team can get the information they need to proceed.
Yeah, I mean, when we have warning, we can plan around it, can't we? So
Mike says he uses the definition of done as a fallback. So, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Mike, but what you're saying is that as long as the team's meeting the definition of done for the stories, then they're on the right path to having it at the quality level needed by the product owner. And then perhaps when the product owner returns, they can have a look at the output of the work to make sure it fulfills the value. It'd be great to have some clarification.
Yeah, so that means the team can carry on to the finished point, if not to the accepted point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is great. Okay, should we talk about this week's book recommendation?
Sure. So over the last week I read this book here, Leading Lean Software Development by Mary and Tom Popendek. I hope I'm saying that correctly. The integration of Lean into software development's been happening over quite a long period of time, and definitely Mary and Tom Popendek are two of the people leading the charge. I thought it was a really good book in a number of ways, especially around some of the case studies. So there's some great case studies about Southwest Airlines, about hospitals, and giving examples of where stopping the line, swarming, getting the problem solved in the location and with the people it happened with, the impact that has. And it's really made me reflect on where there are opportunities for us to implement that sort of lean thinking and integrate it into the wider business. So giving everybody the mandate to stop the line when they notice a quality or other problem. So well worthwhile. Not a particularly long read. I think it took me 4 or 5 hours to get through it, but very dense with information. So
we're going to do a giveaway this week of this book, do you think?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah?
So we've got some more questions here too. So I'll just do those first before we do the giveaway.
Sure.
So Sandy says sometimes it pays off to take the risk to have the team appoint a stand-in product owner and work on an assumption, and to fix any errors of an assumption when the product owner's back. I think that's a really good idea, Sandy, and definitely allows the team to keep going. Mm-hmm. If we've done a good job with the team, then they should have a really good understanding of the vision and the value that the product needs to offer. So hopefully they're in a good position to be able to do that. So you're giving this away. So send an email to info@boost.co.nz with your name, and we'll draw it out of a hat or perhaps out of a squirrel mask, and give this to the person who wins, and we'll announce the winner next time, which will be after Christmas, I think.
I think actually we need to do the draw for last week as well, so we'll probably be announcing that on the board page because we haven't done one for last week, so that should be coming out shortly.
Definitely. So this is the last show before Christmas. We'll be coming back in mid-January. What else are we going to talk about today, Kirsten?
Did you want to say any more about how Lean and Agile fit together? What sort of ideas have you had, ideas have you had for our organisation?
I suppose one of the things that I found interesting looking at the discourse that's happening in the community is often Agile and Lean are pitted against each other. Mm-hmm. But to me, they feel very complementary. So Lean has a lot of core ideas that can be useful with the team and with the organisation. And I think Agile is a really good way of delivering the value that your Lean organisation has decided to deliver. And definitely with the increased interest in Lean Startup, Steve Blank and Eric Rees leading the charge there. The idea that Lean can help us, or Lean Startup in particular, can help us discover what we need to build, where the value is for our audience and our problems and our solution, so that we're building the right thing, rather than our Agile teams being very, very proficient at building something and building something that's not needed. So that would be something that...
So your thoughts are this could be applied on a story basis during a sprint, or?
No, I see it as a wider organisational thing. So Lean Startup, definitely, Eric Rees talks about achieving failure. So the idea that you have, you build a great product that nobody wants. So you've, it's, perfect functionality, it's technically well crafted, but nobody wants to buy it. So you've achieved failure. So avoiding that is obviously really crucial. And I think more broadly with Lean, the idea that rather than seeing problems and patching over them and them reoccurring time and time again, when a problem occurs, fixing it, finding the root cause of the problem, and then moving forward. And that's what we try and do with the inspect and adapt cycle within a Scrum team, obviously. If we raise a problem in a retrospective, then often we'll dig into it using some form of root cause analysis and put in place a fix for that root cause problem so that we don't get that or other similar types of problems in the future.
Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah, so this is, we're winding up the last show for the year. If you've got any suggestions for us on how to make this show better next year, then we would love to hear them. In the meantime, we will be drawing prizes at the
Yeah.
end of next week for this show, and we'll be drawing the prize for last fortnight straight after the show and putting it up on the page.
Yeah.
So thanks everybody for watching, and get in touch if you have any more questions. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much.